She took $20 to destroy a billionaire's love life. But when their eyes met across that restaurant, she had no idea she was about to become the target of the most dangerous game of all. Falling for the enemy she was paid to ruin, $20. That's all Zara had, holding out the crumpled bill as if she were offering a diamond. Isabella raised an eyebrow and crossed her arms, still wearing her restaurant apron like it was a suit of armor. Only $20? You're generous, my friend. That barely covers my emotional rent. Please, Zara begged, clasping her hands like she was performing a third-rate magic trick. My parents are the rich ones, not me. You just need to ruin the date. 10 minutes tops. Pretend you hate me, that I'm awful, that I snore like a freight train. Make something up. Just make sure he never wants to see me again. It was Saturday night in Chicago. The restaurant where Isabella worked, the Golden Terrace, was packed with wealthy couples and expensive dinners served with pretentious French names. Isabella, on the other hand, was paid by the hour, shared an apartment with a dying plant named Oscar and a gecko. Zara had been her best friend since high school, and now her parents were forcing her to go on a blind date with a promising young man, heir to a fortune, according to her mother. But Zara already had a boyfriend, a broke artist, invisible to her family's elite eyes. The arranged date was a threat, and Isabella was the perfect saboteur. Okay, Isabella took a deep breath and grabbed the bill. But if he leaves before the main course, you owe me an extra strawberry milkshake. Isabella walked into the dining room with the confidence of someone who had nothing to lose. Her hair was tied up haphazardly, a notepad in one hand and chaos in her head. She spotted the table in the brightest corner of the room. Zara sat up straight, her smile frozen, her eyes pleading. Gee. Next to her, sitting with calm elegance, was the man, charcoal gray suit, understated but clearly expensive watch, and a gaze as steady as it was dangerous. The kind of man who seemed to know exactly how many billions were in his account and never had to worry about it. Isabella swallowed hard. This was supposed to be just a blind date. Why did the guy look like he'd stepped out of a Billionaire CEO magazine cover? She walked up to the table, pretending she knew nothing. Good evening, she said, forcing an overly bright smile. My name's Isabella, and I'll be taking care of you tonight, or ruining everything, depending on how you look at it. Zara nearly choked on her water. The man, Alexander, just looked up, curious. What can I get you to drink? Isabella asked, looking straight at Alexander. Just don't order sparkling water. Zara snores so loudly in her sleep she wakes the entire building. Oh, and she talks in her sleep too. Full conversations. One time she yelled, "Give me back my croissant," at 3 o'clock in the morning. The neighbors called security thinking there was a bakery robbery. Alexander raised an eyebrow. Isabella, Zara gasped, pretending to be outraged. Oh, sorry, Isabella said dramatically. Was I supposed to save that for the third date? Alexander laughed, a short, quiet, but genuine laugh. And what would you recommend for dinner? He asked, still looking at Isabella. Well, I'd recommend something with lots of garlic. Zara loves garlic. She eats 8 cloves a day for health reasons. The smell follows her around like a loyal dog. Zara's face turned crimson. Alexander leaned forward, clearly entertained. Does she cook? He asked, already knowing the answer. Cook? The last time she tried to make rice, she created a new form of charcoal. It was an emotional moment. The smoke detector cried. Alexander laughed again, this time more freely. Zara looked like she wanted to disappear under the table. Isabella went on for several minutes, spinning one embarrassing story after another. Alexander didn't look repulsed. He looked amused. His eyes stayed on Isabella. He barely glanced at Zara. Finally, Isabella walked away, heading back to the counter with a triumphant smile. Mission accomplished. What she didn't expect was that Alexander's gaze would still be following her when she turned around. Hours later, in the small apartment Isabella shared with Zara and the nearly dead plant named Oscar, the two sat in pajamas, ice cream in their laps, laughing about the night. It worked, Zara cheered. He didn't even finish dessert. Said he had urgent business commitments, left all formal and cold. I told you the exploding lasagna story would seal the deal. Isabella, You're a genius. A genius who works for tips, but thank you." They clinked their spoons like champagne glasses. The plant on the windowsill seemed to sway in approval. What Isabella didn't know was that the next day, Alexander, the calm-eyed, mysterious billionaire heir, was feeling very intrigued. The next morning, Isabella woke up at 10 o'clock with her hair looking like a rebellious bird's nest, and the feeling she had forgotten something important. "Oh, right. Work. Oscar, you could at least warn me when I oversleep," she muttered to the plant, which was still committed to its mission of slowly dying on the windowsill. On Sundays, the Golden Terrace was a different place. Fewer dazzled couples, more families trying to impress in-laws, and lonely executives pretending to read financial newspapers while eating alone. Isabella liked Sundays, less drama, more tips born from existential guilt. She tied her apron around her waist and checked the tables in her section. Table 3, a family with 3 kids who had already turned the floor into a battlefield of crumbs. Table 5, an elderly couple debating whether the sauce had too much salt or not enough love. Table 7, empty, as it usually stayed until late afternoon. Isabella almost dropped her tray. It was him, the man from yesterday's date. She hadn't even paid much attention to his name in all the confusion. "You," she said, pointing at him with her pen as if identifying a suspect. "What are you doing here?" "Having lunch," he replied with that restrained smile that was already starting to annoy Isabella, simply because it was far too charming. "This is a restaurant, isn't it?" "It is, but yesterday you ran out of here like you'd seen the ghost of Italian cuisine. I thought I'd traumatized you forever." "Actually," Alexander sat down comfortably as if he had all day, "I came back for the food." "Really?" Isabella raised a skeptical eyebrow. "You didn't even taste anything yesterday." "Exactly. I got curious." Isabella studied him for a moment. He was wearing a light blue shirt, no tie, and looked more relaxed than the night before, less formal, more human. "Well," she said, picking up her notepad, "what will you have? Just so you know, our special sauce today is chaos seasoned with irony, a house specialty." Alexander laughed, a genuine sound that made Isabella blink in surprise. Chaos and irony. Interesting combination. That's what gives life its flavor. Without it, everything gets very dull. And you know a lot about life's seasonings. "Well, I've been working here for 3 years, serving people who make more in a month than I do in a year. If that doesn't teach you about irony, nothing will." Alexander tilted his head, genuinely interested. "And the chaos?" "Oh, chaos is my specialty," Isabella said dramatically. "Sometimes I can even ruin a romantic date in 15 minutes using nothing but embarrassing stories and creativity. It's an art form." "I saw that. Very impressive." Isabella stopped, pen suspended in the air. "Wait, you thought that was impressive? Most people find it disturbing. Most people are boring." There was a moment of silence where Isabella didn't quite know what to say. Compliments weren't exactly her area of expertise. "Anyway," she cleared her throat, "what do you want to eat? And don't say you choose, because that's too much responsibility for someone who can barely pick which socks to wear in the morning. But I do want you to choose." "Why?" "Because you work here. You must know what's really good." Isabella stared at him, looking for signs of sarcasm. She found none. "All right, but if you complain, remember it was your idea." "Noted." Isabella scribbled down the order and walked away, but not before noticing Alexander watching her as she moved. Not the typical bored customer look, but something different, curious, interested. In the kitchen, she handed the order to Diego, the chef. "Table 7 wants the salmon with passion fruit sauce and the arugula salad with walnuts." "The guy at table 7 hasn't stopped looking at you since he got here," Diego said, as he seasoned a pan. "Do you know him?" "Sort of. It's complicated." "Complicated like psychotic ex-boyfriend, or complicated like billionaire heir falling for the waitress?" Isabella laughed. "Complicated like I have no idea what's going on." When she came back with the drink, Alexander was reading something on his phone, but he immediately put it away when he saw her. "So," she said, setting the glass on the table, While you're waiting for your food, how about telling me why you really came back here? And I'm not accepting "for the food" as an answer. Why not? Because yesterday you seemed more interested in me than in Zara, and that's strange considering it was supposed to be a romantic date with her. Alexander smiled. You're very direct. It's a gift. Comes with the sarcasm and the ability to balance 5 plates on my left arm. Impressive resume. Thank you. Now answer the question. Alexander hesitated, as if choosing his words carefully. You said something yesterday that caught my attention. I said a lot of things yesterday, most of them embarrassing and made up. The way you told it, you have a knack for it, for telling stories, for making people laugh. It's a rare talent. Isabella stopped wiping the table, which was already clean. You're strange. Why? Most of the guys who come here complain if the water isn't the perfect temperature. You're here complimenting my ability to create drama at a dinner table. Maybe I'm not like most of the guys who come here. Before Isabella could answer, Diego rang the kitchen bell. The dish was ready. Saved by the bell, she muttered, heading to get the food. The salmon was perfect as always. Diego had golden hands in the kitchen, even if he was a professional grumbler. Your choice, she said, setting the plate in front of Alexander. If you don't like it, it's entirely my fault, and I'll take the consequences. Alexander took a bite, his eyes lighting up. This is amazing. Diego will be happy to hear that. He's always saying no one appreciates real food anymore. And you? Do you cook? Isabella almost laughed. Me? My cooking skills are limited to instant noodles and peanut butter sandwiches, but at least I have a decent palate. Are you sure? You chose this perfectly. Beginner's luck. Alexander kept eating, clearly enjoying every bite. Isabella moved on to serve other tables, but every time she glanced toward table 7, he was watching her, not in a uncomfortable way, but with genuine interest. When she explained to the family at table 3 why they didn't serve regular nuggets, Alexander smiled. When she convinced the couple at table 5 to try dessert because life is too short to skip the tiramisu, he nodded in approval. You're popular here, he said when she came back to clear his empty plate. Popular is a fancy word for the waitress who talks too much. I'd say charismatic. You have a very generous vocabulary. Alexander chuckled and signaled for the check. How much do I owe? Isabella calculated quickly. $28. Alexander took out his wallet and placed 2 $50 bills on the table along with a small, elegant card. The change. Keep it. Isabella looked at the money. $72 in tips on a $28 meal. That's a lot. For exceptional service and a perfect menu choice. Take it, Alexander said as he stood up. And read the card after I'm gone. He left with the same calm stride as yesterday, but this time, Isabella had the feeling something had changed. She picked up the card. Expensive paper, elegant gold-embossed letters. Alexander Sterling, CEO, Sterling Global Empire. Isabella read it once, twice, 3 times. Oh my God, she whispered, then louder. Oh my God. Diego came out from the kitchen. What? Someone die? Worse. Isabella held up the card, her voice almost a squeak. I called the CEO of Sterling Global Empire a spoiled rich boy last night. Diego's eyes widened. Sterling Global? The company that owns half the skyscrapers in Chicago? The tech and real estate empire worth $50 billion? The very same. Isabella covered her face with her hands. I'm a dead woman. He's going to sue me for defamation or something worse. Or, Diego grinned, he came back here because he likes you. Isabella looked at the card again, then at the now empty table 7, then at the outrageous tip still in her hand. This is going to be a lot more complicated than I thought, she murmured. Isabella was polishing glasses at the Golden Terrace when her phone vibrated. Unknown number. She hesitated before answering. Calls from unknown numbers usually meant debt collectors or vacuum cleaner salesmen. Hello, Isabella. It's Alexander. She almost dropped the glass she was holding. Alexander? How did you get my number? I asked the manager. I said it was urgent. Urgent? Isabella felt her heart race. Did something happen? Are you going to sue me? Because I can explain about last night's comments. I didn't know you were… Isabella, breathe. His voice sounded amused. I'm not going to sue you. Actually, I was calling to invite you out. Total silence. Isabella checked to see if she was still awake. Out? Like on a date? As friends, Alexander quickly clarified. I thought you could show me Chicago from a different perspective, away from expensive restaurants and board meetings. Isabella looked around the restaurant, trying to process the situation. The multi-billionaire CEO was inviting the sarcastic waitress to hang out. This definitely wasn't in any urban survival manual. I don't know if that's a good idea. Why not? Because you're you and I'm me. We're from completely different worlds. Exactly, Alexander said. That's why it will be interesting. Despite every mental alarm going off, Isabella found herself smiling. All right, but I picked the place. Perfect. When? Today, after work. Meet me at Millennium Park at 6 o'clock. I'll be there. 3 hours later, Isabella was walking through the park looking for Alexander. She had traded her work uniform for jeans and a simple blouse, but still felt out of place. She spotted him near Cloud Gate, dressed casual. We as well. Dark jeans, a gray shirt, and sneakers. He looked less like a CEO and more ordinary. You came, Alexander said with a genuine smile. I said I would. I'm not in the habit of breaking my word. A good quality. So, what's the plan, tour guide? Isabella looked around. The park was full of families, tourists, and couples enjoying a Tuesday afternoon. First, we'll see the Crown Fountain. Then, we can walk to the lake and… She stopped, noticing the dark clouds gathering overhead. Or maybe we should find somewhere covered. Why? It's a beautiful day. As if the universe wanted to prove Isabella right, a raindrop landed on Alexander's nose. Because Chicago has a gift for changing the weather faster than a teenager's mood, Isabella said, seconds before the sky opened up above them. The rain started as a drizzle and within minutes turned into a downpour worthy of a dramatic movie. Isabella and Alexander ran looking for shelter, but every covered spot was already crowded with people who had the same idea. This way! Isabella shouted over the sound of the rain, pulling Alexander by the hand. They dashed through wet streets until they reached the building where Isabella lived. It wasn't exactly the Ritz, but it had a roof. And at that moment, that felt like luxury. Sorry, Isabella said, pushing her soaked hair back as they climbed the stairs. This wasn't exactly how I planned the outing. It's perfect, Alexander replied, and he sounded sincere. Isabella opened her apartment door and instantly regretted it. The place was a mess. Clothes on the armchair, books stacked on the floor, and Oscar, the plant, looking more dead than alive. Welcome to my palace, she said sarcastically. Sorry about the decor. The style is functional chaos. Alexander stepped inside, looking around with curiosity, not judgment. It's cozy. It's small and messy. It's you, he said simply. And Isabella wasn't sure if that was a compliment or just a fact. You're dripping on my floor, she pointed out. I'll get towels. When she came back from the kitchen with 2 clean towels, Alexander was looking over the bookshelf. You read a lot, he said. When I have time, and when I can afford books that aren't used. What do you like to read? Everything. Romance, mystery, biographies. Isabella paused. Cookbooks. Alexander turned toward her, interested. Cooking? Isabella wrapped the towel around herself, suddenly feeling shy. It's just a hobby. The same hobby that made you pick my perfect dish last night? Maybe. Can I see? Isabella hesitated, but went to the shelf and pulled out a worn cookbook with handwritten notes in the margins. It was my dad's, she explained. He had a food truck when I was little. He taught me that cooking is art, science, and love all mixed together. Alexander turned the pages carefully, reading the notes. These recipes are yours? Some tweaks, improvements? Dreams, Isabella sighed. I've always wanted to have my own restaurant, something small and warm where people feel at home, but dreams don't pay the rent. Why not try? With what money? With what experience? I work as a waitress, not a chef. But you have talent. Talent isn't enough in the real world. Alexander closed the book and looked at her. Have you ever tried? Chasing the dream? For real? Isabella laughed, but without humor. Sander, you don't get it. People like me don't open restaurants. People like me serve food in restaurants owned by people like you. That's nonsense. That's reality. They were silent for a moment, the tension thick in the air. I'm hungry, Alexander said at last. Are you cooking or should we order pizza? Isabella glanced toward the tiny kitchen. I can improvise something, just don't expect miracles. I accept the challenge. Isabella rummaged through the fridge and cupboards. There wasn't much, but enough. Pasta, tomatoes, garlic, and some herbs she grew on the windowsill. Alexander sat at the counter watching her work. Isabella started by sautéing garlic and olive oil, adding chopped tomatoes and fresh seasonings. Her movements were fluid, natural. Where'd you learn to do that? Alexander asked. From my dad. He used to say, every dish tells a story. And what story is this one telling? Isabella smiled as she stirred the sauce. The story of a waitress trying to impress a billionaire CEO with $5 worth of ingredients. It's working. The pasta was ready in 20 minutes, simple but perfectly seasoned. Alexander took a bite and closed his eyes. This is amazing. It's just pasta with tomato sauce. No, it's not. This has soul. They ate at the small kitchen table, talking about everything and nothing. Alexander spoke about the pressure of taking over his father's company, about expectations and responsibilities. Isabella talked about growing up without much money, but with plenty of love. Sometimes, Alexander said, I envy people like you. Poor people? Isabella laughed. Trust me, it's not as glamorous as it sounds. Free people. You can be whoever you want, do whatever you want. As long as I can pay the bills, but you get to choose your own battles. Isabella studied him. There was something vulnerable in his expression. And you can't? My battles were chosen before I was born. The moment turned intimate, filled with unexpected honesty. Alexander leaned slightly forward, and Isabella felt her heart race. That's when the door flew open. Isabella! Zara shouted, clearly drunk. You won't believe the night I've had. She stumbled into the kitchen and stopped abruptly when she saw Alexander. Hi, she said, blinking several times as if trying to focus. You're really handsome. Are you a delivery guy? Isabella choked. Zara, because if you are, I need to order a pizza. I'm starving. Zara tripped and grabbed the table for support. Wait, why are you wearing Diego's shirt? This is Alexander, Isabella said quickly. Alexander? Zara frowned. Alexander who? The only Alexander I know is that guy who… Her eyes went wide. Oh my God, you're the guy from the date. Alexander gave a polite wave. Hello, Zara. You came back? Zara yelled, then whispered loudly. Isabella, he looks really hot today. You're drunk. I am, but I'm not blind. Zara turned to Alexander. Do you like Isabella? Zara! Isabella's face turned red. Because she's amazing. She cooks like an angel. She's funny, and once she saved a cat from a tree. Well, the cat actually climbed down on its own, but she tried. And Alexander laughed. Good to know. And she's single, Zara went on. Very single. Tragically single. Like hasn't been kissed in 6 months. Single. Zara, what? I'm helping. Zara tripped again. You two make a beautiful couple. He's rich, you're poor, just like a soap opera. Isabella wished the floor would swallow her whole. I think I'd better go, Alexander said, standing up. No, stay, Zara protested. I'll go to my room and you can keep doing whatever you were doing, and by the look of things, it was something interesting. She gave them an exaggerated wink and staggered toward her room, slamming the door behind her. Isabella and Alexander were left in awkward silence. Sorry, Isabella murmured. She gets like that when she drinks. It's fine, Alexander smiled, but I think I really should go. You have work early tomorrow. You're right. They walked to the door in silence. Alexander turned before leaving. Thank you for dinner and for the company. This was the best night I've had in a long time, even with the rain and Zara being drunk, especially because of that. He leaned in, and for a moment Isabella thought he was going to kiss her, but instead he gently kissed her forehead. Good night, Isabella. And he left, leaving Isabella in the doorway, touching the spot where his lips had been, her heart beating faster than it should. In the days after that rain-soaked dinner, Alexander started showing up at the Golden Terrace with increasing frequency. Not every day, but often enough for Elena, the manager, to start asking uncomfortable questions, and for the other waiters to start speculating about Isabella's rich admirer. On Thursday, he came in at lunchtime and ordered only a coffee, staying for 2 hours, reading newspapers and watching Isabella work. On Friday, he showed up at the end of her shift and offered her a ride home, which she refused but thanked him for. On Saturday, he simply appeared at the park where Isabella was walking, pretending it was a coincidence. "Are you following me?" Isabella asked, stopping next to the bench where Alexander was sitting with a book. "Technically, I was here first," he replied, holding up the book. "Restaurant Management for Beginners. Fascinating reading." Isabella glanced at the book, then back at him. "Why are you reading that?" "Academic curiosity." Alexander Sterling doesn't do anything out of academic curiosity. You've got some crazy plan in your head, don't you? Alexander closed the book and smiled in that dangerously familiar way. "Actually, I have a proposal for you. If it's for me to be your private waitress, the answer is no." "Better than that." Alexander stood suddenly, looking nervous. "I want to invest in your restaurant." Isabella blinked. "What restaurant?" "The one you're going to open, with me as the investor, eh? And you as the chef and partner." The world stopped for a moment. Isabella was sure she had misheard. "Are you out of your mind?" "Probably," Alexander laughed. "But I'm serious. I have the capital, significant capital. You have the talent. We can make this happen." Isabella started walking, needing to move to process what she was hearing. "Alexander, you barely know me. You've eaten my food once. Pasta with tomato sauce is hardly fine dining." "It's not about the food," he said, walking beside her. "Well, it's not just about the food. It's about the way you talk about cooking, the passion in your eyes when you mention your father, how you turn something simple into something special." Isabella stopped walking. "This is pity. You feel sorry for the poor waitress with impossible dreams." "No." Alexander's expression grew serious. "Maybe men like me recognize opportunities when they see them. And maybe people like you deserve chances they've never had." Despite the stirring in her chest, Isabella pushed the feeling away. "The answer is no, Alexander. Thank you for the offer, but no." She walked quickly toward her apartment, leaving Alexander standing in the park with his proposal rejected and his confusion clear. At home, Isabella found Zara in the kitchen attacking a tub of ice cream like it had personally offended her family. "Rough day?" Zara asked, offering her a spoon. "Alexander Sterling just offered me money to open a restaurant," Isabella said, dropping onto the couch. Zara nearly choked on her ice cream. "He what? And you said yes, of course?" "I said no." Zara stared at her, as if she had just confessed to being an alien. "You said no to an investment in your dream from the richest man you know who is clearly interested in you?" "That's exactly why I said no. I don't want romantic charity." "Isabella, you're an idiot." "Thanks for the support, best friend." Zara stood and started rummaging through a drawer full of old papers. "Where is—" "Ah, here." She pulled out a yellowed, crumpled flyer, an old advertisement for Isabella's father's food truck. Tony's Mobile Kitchen, homemade food made with love. There was a faded picture of her father, smiling proudly beside the red trailer. "Zara," Isabella's voice came out weaker than she intended. "Your father believed in his dreams," Zara said. "He started with nothing and built something beautiful, and you're throwing away the chance to carry on his legacy out of pride." "It's not pride, it's fear," Zara continued, sitting beside her. "You're afraid to try and fail. You're afraid to accept help because that would mean you might need people. And heaven forbid Isabella should need anyone." Isabella held the flyer, running her fingers over the faded picture. "What if it doesn't work out?" What if it does? What if he's doing this for the wrong reasons? What if he's doing it for the right ones? Isabella looked at Zara. When did you get so wise? Since my best friend started sabotaging the chance of a lifetime. The next morning, Isabella was setting up tables when Alexander showed up, but this time he wasn't empty-handed. He carried a folder and had that determined look he probably wore in important board meetings. Can I talk to you? He asked. Alexander, I already said. 5 minutes, please. Elena nodded that it was fine, and Isabella led him to a corner table. Alexander opened the folder and spread papers across the surface. Floor plans, handwritten menu ideas, comprehensive market research. What is all this? Your opportunity, Alexander said. I spent last night thinking about what you said yesterday, about charity and wrong motives. Isabella looked at the papers. The floor plans showed a small but cozy space with an open kitchen and intimate tables. The menu featured simple but refined dishes, exactly the kind of food she dreamed of making. Alexander, this isn't a charity project, he continued. It's a smart investment in real talent. I put up the initial capital. We're talking about a $2 million investment. You bring the culinary knowledge and passion. We split the profits 50-50. You did a full market study overnight? I have a very efficient team. Everything was detailed, thought out, real. Why are you doing this? Alexander hesitated. Because in 3 meetings with you, I have felt more alive than in the last 3 years running a billion-dollar empire. Because you have something I lost a long time ago. Passion for something that truly matters. And because... He paused, deciding whether to continue. Because I believe in you. Isabella felt something shift inside her chest. There was no pity in his eyes. It was respect, admiration, faith. I still think you're crazy. Probably. Do you accept anyway? Isabella looked again at the papers, then at Alexander, then around the restaurant where she worked, serving other people's dreams. I need to think. How long? A day, maybe 2. Alexander began gathering the papers. You can keep these, read them, think about them, change whatever you want, but Isabella. He stopped and looked her directly in the eyes. Don't let fear make the decision for you. That night, Isabella spread the papers out on her kitchen table and remembered Zara's words about carrying on her father's legacy. She went to her bedroom and opened the dresser drawer where she kept important things. At the very back, wrapped in an old t-shirt, was her father's recipe notebook. Isabella hadn't opened it in years. It had always been too painful. But now, with Alexander's proposal on the kitchen table and the old food truck flyer beside it, she felt it might finally be time. She opened the notebook slowly. On the first page was her father's familiar handwriting. For my Isabella, who always knew that food made with love can change the world. She turned the pages, seeing the notes, handwritten adjustments, little sketches of dishes he had wanted to try. On the last used page, she found something she had never noticed before. The secret isn't expensive ingredients or complicated techniques. The secret is cooking with an open heart and never being afraid to try something new. Dreams are ingredients too, my daughter. Use them generously. Isabella closed the notebook and looked at Alexander's papers spread across the table. Maybe, she murmured to herself, touching the notebook's cover, I'm ready. 3 months later, Isabella stood in front of what used to be an empty space in Lincoln Park. Now, a red and gold sign read, Isabella's Fire. Her hands trembled as she held the keys, and for a moment, she wondered if she'd made the biggest mistake of her life. Are you going to stand there until it gets dark? Alexander appeared beside her, carrying a box of the last kitchen utensils. I'm processing, Isabella replied. 3 months ago I was a waitress, now I'm a restaurant owner. Partner, Alexander corrected, and chef, and the bravest person I know. The interior of Isabella's Fire perfectly reflected her personality. Warm, earth-toned walls with unpretentious art, plants hanging in handmade ceramic pots and rustic wooden tables that looked like they had stories to tell. The kitchen was open, so customers could watch the magic happen. Opening night was chaos in the best possible way. The sound system malfunctioned, the oven's temperature fluctuated wildly, and Lucas, one of the college student servers, tripped and sent mushroom risotto flying across 3 tables in a spectacular display. But instead of disaster, it became part of the charm. The food critics who got splashed started laughing and asked to take photos of the art installation on the floor. By 9 o'clock, against all odds, the restaurant was running smoothly. The guests were clearly enjoying themselves, not for the perfection, but for the authenticity. Isabella was in the kitchen, finally breathing normally for the first time in hours, when Alexander appeared. "How are you feeling?" he asked. "Like I've survived a culinary tornado," Isabella laughed, "but a good tornado, you know. These last few months working with you, watching you create this, it's not just about the restaurant anymore," Alexander said, stepping closer. "I've fallen in love with you, with your passion, your courage, the way you turn chaos into magic." Isabella felt her heart race. "So have I," she whispered. "I've fallen in love too." Alexander leaned in to kiss her, and for a moment, the world stopped. Splash! A wave of tomato sauce hit them both head-on. Lucas had slipped again, this time carrying an entire pot of sauce. For a moment, Isabella thought they might cry. Then Alexander started laughing, and Isabella joined in. Within seconds, they were laughing like teenagers, standing in their kitchen, completely covered in sauce. What they didn't know was that a customer had filmed the whole scene. The video of the 2 restaurant owners kissing and then immediately getting hit by a tsunami of tomato sauce was posted on Instagram 20 minutes later. By the end of the night, the video had 25,000 views. The next day, Alexander's phone rang with his furious mother on the other end. "Alexander Sterling, you kissed a waitress in public. It's on the internet." A week later, Alexander was sitting in the 50th floor penthouse office of Sterling Global Empire, facing his parents like judges in a courtroom. Victoria Sterling, elegant and imposing, held a tablet showing the viral video. William Sterling stood behind his mahogany desk with the most serious expression Alexander had seen in years. $50 billion in family wealth. "And this is how you represent the Sterling name?" Victoria said. "Like a normal person?" Alexander suggested. "Like a fool." William slammed his hand on the desk. The confrontation escalated quickly. Alexander tried to defend Isabella, explaining she was his partner and a talented chef, but his parents saw only a gold-digging waitress. "If you continue with this relationship," William finally said, "you will be removed as CEO of Sterling Global Empire. Your inheritance will be cut off. You will be disowned." Alexander felt as if he had been punched in the stomach. "You wouldn't do that." "We will," Victoria confirmed. "You have 1 week to end this and come to your senses." In the days that followed, Isabella noticed Alexander becoming distant and cold. W's. What she didn't know was that his parents had launched a sophisticated sabotage campaign against the restaurant. A well-dressed man came in, ate quietly, then returned 20 minutes later claiming food poisoning and threatening to sue for $500,000. Isabella was devastated, but the incident was completely fabricated. Part of the Sterling family's plan to destroy the restaurant and force Alexander to choose. Alexander hired a private investigator who discovered the truth. His own parents had orchestrated the entire scandal. When confronted, they admitted everything, but refused to back down. Rather than give up, Isabella decided to fight back with transparency. She organized a Night of Truth, a free tasting event where she would prove the restaurant's integrity. More than 100 people showed up, including food critics and loyal customers. Isabella served course after course, explaining the sourcing of every ingredient, inviting health inspectors to examine the kitchen, and turning what could have been a disaster into a triumph of authenticity. The event was such a success that people were buying vouchers for future visits and posting positive reviews on social media. But as the last guests left, Isabella found a new court summons on the floor, this time for $2 million, alleging deceptive business practices. At midnight, there was a knock on the restaurant door. Isabella opened it to find Alexander standing outside with 2 suitcases, his expression a mix of determination and desperation. "I was fired," he said simply. "Well, technically I was removed as CEO and cut off from my inheritance, but the important part is, do I still have you? My parents hired that man to create the scandal. They're behind the lawsuits. I found out today and confronted them. I told them I chose you, the restaurant, our life together. They said if I didn't break up with you by tomorrow, I'd lose everything, so I lost everything." He smiled sadly. "But I gained the chance to fight by your side, if you'll let me." Isabella looked into his eyes and saw only love and determination. "Well," she said at last, "I hope you can cook, because now we're 2 unemployed people with a restaurant to save." 3 months later, Isabella's fire had not only survived, but thrived. Alexander, now a former Billionaire'S CEO, had adjusted to life as a full partner in the restaurant. His mornings began at 5 a.m., helping Diego prep ingredients, and ended after midnight planning the next day's menu. "Are you happy?" Isabella asked one morning, watching him chop onions with surgical precision. "I'm exhausted, my feet hurt, my hands are full of cuts, and I make in a month what I used to make in a day," Alexander replied, "and I've never felt so fulfilled in my life." The success led to opportunities for expansion. Independent investors believed in their vision of honest, accessible food. A second location opened in the West Loop to great acclaim. Despite their success, Isabella began to withdraw, convinced that Alexander would eventually regret giving up his empire for her. One night, as she tried to break up with him for his own good, Alexander surprised her by pulling out a ring box. "You are the most stubborn, impossible, infuriating person I have ever met," he said, kneeling in their restaurant kitchen. "And that is exactly why I want to spend the rest of my life trying to convince you that you are worthy of love. Will you marry me?" "You're crazy," Isabella whispered through tears. "Completely crazy about you. Crazy about this life we've built. I didn't lose anything. I gained everything." Isabella knelt down beside him on the kitchen floor. "Yes," she said, smiling through her tears. "Yes, I'll marry you." Months later, during a special investor dinner to celebrate their expansion, the Sterling family made one last attempt to destroy Isabella's reputation. They arrived with fake documents and accusations, trying to convince the investors that Isabella was a gold digger who had manipulated their son. But Zara burst in with a flash drive containing evidence of the Sterling family's illegal sabotage campaign. Videos of their hired investigator planting evidence and recordings of phone calls detailing the conspiracy. "The truth is simple," Zara announced to the room. "Isabella and Alexander met by chance, truly fell in love, and built an honest business through hard work. The only lies here are the accusations from this family of vipers." The investors, instead of being swayed by the Sterling's lies, were impressed by Isabella and Alexander's integrity under pressure. What should have been a night of humiliation became an unplanned display of character. Later that evening, William and Victoria Sterling returned, not to cause more trouble, but to apologize. William had seen an interview Isabella gave about the restaurant and her dreams, and it had moved him to tears. "I saw the passion in your eyes," he told Isabella. "The same passion Alexander has always had, and I never understood. I realized you didn't take my son away from me. You brought him back to life." The grand reopening celebration was magical. Friends, family, investors, and staff gathered to celebrate not just the restaurant's success, but Isabella and Alexander's engagement. When they announced their upcoming marriage, the room burst into applause. Zara, of course, took credit as the official matchmaker. "If it weren't for me sabotaging that awful blind date, these two never would have met." As the evening wound down, Isabella came out of the kitchen wearing a new apron embroidered with "Head Chef of His Heart." Alexander pulled her close, asking, "So what's on the menu today?" "A future seasoned with love," Isabella replied. a pinch of adventure, and lots of laughter. They danced slowly in the middle of their empty restaurant, surrounded by the aromas of a perfect night and the promise of many more to come. From a $20 sabotage job to a billion-dollar love story, they had discovered that the best recipes in life, like the best revenge, are served with authenticity, courage, and an open heart. Sometimes, the most unexpected ingredients create the most beautiful dishes, and sometimes the best love stories begin with the worst blind dates. What did you think of Isabella and Alexander's story? Share your thoughts in the comments. Rate this story from 0 to 10. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to follow all our stories.